Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our Pali Canon and English study group, and we're studying the words of the Buddha. We're in volume 10 of our book series, which is titled The Buddha's Way. We're going to be studying chapters 21 through 30 today. And the way that we do this program is I invite students who are in Zoom to be able to read a chapter. Then I'll share some teachings on that chapter, and then I'll open up to any and all questions that you guys might have related to that specific chapter. If you're in Zoom and you would like to volunteer to read, all you need to do is electronically raise your hand, and I'll be able to see that, and you can unmute and then read. And then when we get to the question period, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom and you'd like to ask questions, you can either put that in the comment section and I'll be able to see it, or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any and all questions that you like. So I see that Pat has raised his hand to read, so we'll go ahead over to Pat, and then after that I'll share some teachings on that, and then I'll open up to any questions that you guys have. Oh, sorry, Pat.
There we go. The suitable way for attaining Nibbana, enlightenment, third discourse. Monks, I will teach you the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. And what, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana? Here, a monk sees the I as a non-self. He sees forms as non-self. He sees I consciousness as non-self. He sees eye contact as non-self. He sees as non-self whatever feeling arises with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the ear as non-self. He sees sound as non-self. He sees ear consciousness as non-self. He sees ear contact as non-self. He sees as non-self whatever feeling arises with ear contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the nose as non-self. He sees odors as non-self. He sees nose consciousness as non-self. He sees nose contact as non-self. He sees as non-self whatever feeling arises with nose contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the tongue as non-self. He sees flavors as non-self. He sees tongue consciousness as non-self. He sees tongue contact as non-self. He sees as non-self whatever feeling arises with tongue contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the body as non-self. He sees physical objects as non-self. He sees body consciousness as non-self. He sees body contact as non-self. He sees as non-self whatever feeling arises with body contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. He sees the mind as non-self. He sees mental objects as non-self. He sees mind consciousness as non-self. He sees mind contact as non-self. He sees as non-self whatever feeling arises with mind contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. This, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So if you guys remember back to last week, we had two discourses right at the end, which was very similar to this one, which was the first discourse, the second discourse, and now the third discourse. And what the Buddha is doing is he's walking through the three universal truths in a way that helps you to see that anything that you're experiencing through these sense spaces, that they're all impermanent, that they lead to discontentedness if you have craving, desire, attachment, and that this isn't you. It's not who you are. Because the unenlightened mind is craving permanence, and it doesn't understand that the world around you is impermanent. The mind is experiencing those conditioned feelings of discontentedness, where it's forming its inner feelings based on some condition. Either it experiences pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. So happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria, those painful feelings of sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, and then the neither painful nor pleasant feelings like shyness or displeasure or dissatisfaction. These are all conditioned feelings that, based on some condition, the mind is now going to experience a feeling because of that. Well, this is all happening through the sense bases, through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. There's some contact that the individual is experiencing, and now because of its central desire or its craving, desire, attachment, it sees that contact as either agreeable or disagreeable. And if it's agreeable, the mind will typically get pleasant feelings, and if it's disagreeable, the mind will get the painful feelings. So the mind is going up and down with that discontentedness. And then sometimes what the mind does is it'll latch onto these things, thinking that this is who you are. So say you have a really fancy car, you might think that I am rich, I am wealthy, I am so well established. Or, say that you think you're having some kind of, sound through the ears like music, and you think I am a great dancer, right? So the Buddha here is reminding you that anything you're experiencing through the sense bases, this is not who you are. That's what he means by non-self. This is not you, because the mind's going to cling to these things thinking that this is who you are. So for example, if you hear a music through your ears and you get happy and pleasant feelings with that, but then you hear another music that you get painful feelings, you might say, I am angry. Right? But what the Buddha is explaining to you is that I is not you. This anger that you're experiencing, when he's talking about these feelings here, since we're talking about the ear, we'll come down here, this feelings that you are experiencing because of the contact through the ear, whatever these feelings are, that's not you. It's not who you are. Because the mind will think, when it has this personal existence view, is things like, I am hungry, I am thirsty, I have a headache, all this I am angry, I am sad, I am frustrated. What you need to be able to see is that the mind is experiencing anger, or the body needs food, or the body needs water, rather than putting that I in there. Because as long as you have that I in there, then you're going to get those pleasant feelings when you experience agreeable contact about this physical body, where someone compliments you and says, wow, you're so beautiful, or you're so handsome, or that shirt really brings out the color of your eyes. You'll get all these pleasant feelings, but then it's only a matter of time before somebody says something degrading and disparaging, that now when they're talking about this body in a negative way, now you'll experience the painful feelings. So it's important not to see any of this stuff that's coming through the sense bases as who you are as a person. When I introduce you to the universal truth of non-self and all the foundational classes, we just talk about it in a foundational way. We talk about self-image and we talk about self-identity. And this is usually a lot for people to try to understand when they're first getting started on the path. But then in these particular books, the Buddha is taking it deeper, so you can see that what the mind's really doing with its personal existence view is it's clinging to the five aggregates. It's clinging to the physical form, it's clinging to the feelings, it's clinging to your perceptions, which are your views and opinions about the world. The mind will cling to your decisions, your volitional formations, your choices and decisions, and then it'll cling to the mind itself, the self-identity. So while in the introduction classes I tend to talk about self-image and the self-identity, you need to be able to see how the mind clings to all these other things too, thinking this is who you are. I don't know the political system everywhere in the world, but since I know a lot of you guys are from the US, like your views and opinions. If you have certain political views, someone might think that I am a liberal, or I am a conservative, or I'm Republican, or I am Democrat, right? That's because the mind's clinging to its perceptions of who you think you are. It's clinging to your views and opinions, and now someone might feel like they have to adamantly advocate and they need to convince other people of their views and opinions. And now that produces craving, the mind is longing, yearning, and if people agree with you, you'll feel happy, but if they don't agree with you. You'll feel angry or frustrated, and now you might be unskillful in your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and you damage your relationships. So what the Buddha is teaching you is none of these things are you. So here he's talking about the internal sense base, whether we start up here with the eyes, he's talking about the internal sense base. He's saying that eye there, that's not you. So, right, if somebody's like, wow, you have such beautiful eyes, it's like, that's not me. You need to train your mind to not cling to that and think that that's who you are. You don't have to say that to the person, right? But within your own mind, you need to disassociate with that I as being who you are. Now, anything that you see, right? So if you see a beautiful house or an expensive car, it's important for you to not adopt that as your identity of who you think you are. And now there's this I consciousness, which this is where the I sees the physical form, and now the I consciousness is where the mind's aware of that. And the Buddha is saying that's not you either. Once the mind becomes aware, that's not who you are. And then he describes the internal sense base, the external sense base, in the awareness of that as contact, because you've now been contacted through the sense base. And he's saying that's not you either. That's not who you are. And then whatever feelings arise, because if there's craving, desire, attachment in the mind, then there's going to be feelings based on that contact. Based on that contact as condition, whatever feelings arise, that's not you either, right? So it's not I am angry, I am sad, I am frustrated. It's the mind is experiencing frustration or the mind is experiencing anger, right? So you need to disassociate that with who you are, because there's this body, then there's this mind, and the combination of the two we refer to as a person. This is like a third entity. The Buddha talks about it as the person. Some people refer to it as the observer. And the mind's over here being this polluted, defiled mind that has cravings and anger and frustration, and the person's like, hey, Mrs. Mind, hey, Mr. Mind, you're going to need to get some help. You need to get some training here. And the mind's like, no, we're not going to do that. So the person has to be wise enough to look at the mind and say, hey, that I is not you, that form is not you, that I consciousness, I contact, these feelings, it's not who you are. So the person is essentially training the mind, and treating the mind like a third entity can be really helpful, because you can have conversations with it, right? Where you can be like, hey, look, mind, just let go. You're so silly. Stop clinging to this thing and getting so frustrated and angry about it. Let it go, right? So understanding what the Buddha is teaching you here will help you to disassociate with all of these things and ultimately get to more and more peace, because you're not clinging to any of this stuff thinking that this is who you are. So ultimately, he gets down here and he says, okay, this is a suitable way for attaining enlightenment, because this is one of the things of many that you need to be able to learn and understand in order to experience this enlightened mental state. So let me know what questions you guys have, if any at all, here on this particular chapter. This is just kind of a continuation of where we were last week. Okay, looks like Alberto has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, so David, so would you say or when people say I am vegetarian or I am a vegan, so should we say I prefer eating vegetarian food or I prefer eating plant-based food? Or when people say I'm not a morning person or I'm a night owl, instead of saying that, would it be like better to train our mind to say I am more productive at night, or I have more focus in the morning? I don't know.
Yeah, what you would like to do, and it's challenging, and especially as you first get started, is you like to shed that I as much as you can and disassociate with it. So it sounds kind of weird if you talk to people outside the path to enlightenment, but really what we're saying is this being prefers the evening hours, right? But we use this word I because the English language is really kind of unfitting to describe what we're really experiencing. So in the Thai language, we always talk in the third person. So instead of saying, I am hungry, do you want to go to the restaurant with me? What we would say in Thai is we would say, David is hungry, would Bailan like to go to the restaurant with me? So we always talk in this third person because this Thai language has been informed by 800 to 1200 years of Buddhist teaching. So when they created their language, they created it in a way that supports people realizing non-self because they understood that that was important. So what we need to be able to do with the English language is we need to be able to get to the point where we can say, I prefer to stay awake at night rather than wake up in the morning, but don't associate that in your mind as who you are as a person. So you might go an extended period of time, maybe 6 months or a year, not even using the word I as much as possible. And it really helps to be amongst a community of practitioners who understand, so that when you're saying that, the mind will disassociate with that pronoun of I or me or anything like that. So this is what you would ultimately like to get to, but it can be challenging, if you're talking to your students, Alberto, or other faculty members, they'd be like, whoa, what is Alberto smoking? Talking like this. It would be kind of strange and odd for them. So if you can at least make the switch in your mind that if you're saying, I prefer to be awake at night, or I prefer to wake up early in the morning, that even though you're using that I pronoun, that the mind doesn't associate this thing with who you are as a person.
Okay, and thank you. That makes sense. And also for labels such as vegetarian or vegan, would you get rid of those labels as well?
Yeah, the same thing. Like instead of saying I am vegan, oftentimes people ask me like, are you vegan? And I will say, I prefer to eat plant-based food. Instead of like associating with a label of I am vegan, right? So this is the way for you to shed these labels that people tend to adopt in their mind. Even like I am Buddhist. People sometimes ask me, are you Buddhist? If I'm like in a situation where I'm like at the hospital and it's a nurse and they're filling out a paperwork and it's just easier to say yes, I'll just say yes. But if it's a student, somebody who's in the community, someone who's really interested in learning, then I will say, well, I don't associate with that label. I do practice the teachings of the Buddha, this better way of life that he taught, but I don't adopt that identity of I am a Buddhist. So you'll find that in certain situations you might speak one way, in other situations you might speak another way. And this is helpful for you because oftentimes in places like the USA, they kind of have this like pre-programmed way of talking. If like somebody says, yeah, my mom just died, then everybody's supposed to say, I'm sorry for your loss, right? Or if somebody says, yeah, I'm a World War II veteran, people are supposed to say, thank you for your service and things like this. And you would like to get away from those pre-programmed ways of talking and moving to this higher consciousness and think through the situation that you're in and make a wise decision about how you speak. So in some situations you might speak a certain way, and in other situations you might speak a slightly different way, all in support of your mind shedding this personal existence view.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, looks like we have some more here. Vibhav, you have a question?
Yeah, David, two questions. I think we talked about directly, but if you can also just expound on the differences between a self and what is commonly referred to as a soul. But I think those two terms are kind of mixed in a lot of cases where people think the self is what like goes around and like is carried over to different births. And so the idea of non-self, as you explained to me, was kind of different from the idea of a soul that was just going around and like being transformed or like being transported to a different life. So if you can expand on that. And I have a second question, but I can ask after.
Yeah, if people are talking about a soul related to the teachings of the Buddha, they haven't penetrated into them deeply enough to be able to see the Buddha didn't teach anything about a soul. He left this as an undeclared teaching. He didn't say that there is a soul. He didn't say that there isn't a soul, because the concept of a soul conflicts with the universal truth of impermanence, and it conflicts with the universal truth of non-self as well. So when we're talking about shedding this personal existence view and getting to the point where you realize non-self, we're not talking about a soul or anything like that. So if there's any kind of thoughts like that in your mind, then set that aside and realize that the Buddha didn't describe whether there is a soul or isn't a soul. He specifically calls it out as an undeclared teaching.
Okay. I have a second question I asked for Dennis.
You can go ahead while your mic's open, Vibhav.
Okay. The second question is around getting rid of, or at least the idea of not clinging or getting rid of the perceptions and choices and decisions. I guess we already have made some choices and decisions, or we have some perception already, right? So today I learned that Alberto is a university teacher, so I have a perception of him being a university teacher. And maybe tomorrow he changes his job and he's no longer a university teacher, but I have that perception in my mind. So we do have some perceptions about ourselves or about other people as well. And so the idea here is that even though we have some perceptions, we're not clinging to them, right? It's just that if something changes about that perception, you're like, okay, this is fine. This is what I thought it was, but it's not what it is, right? But perceptions are still there, but you're not clinging to them, right?
Yeah. So
same thing with choices and decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, you're just not clinging to it. So one of the examples I give is like police officers, they're trained to not cling to their perceptions. Because if they got a call that said, hey, go down to the 7-Eleven, somebody is robbing a convenience store, and we need you to go down there and take care of it. And of course, they talk differently than that on their radios, but they're sending this police officer in there. Well, if he slings open the door to the convenience store and there's a person in a black hoodie with a gun standing over top of someone who's laying on the floor bleeding, and the police walk in, if they cling to their perception, they might think that the person in the black hoodie is the robber, and they might pull out their gun and just start shooting. And what might have actually happened is they might have just shot the cashier, because maybe the cashier somehow struggled to get the gun out of this person's hand, and they're the ones who shot the person, and the robber's the one bleeding out on the ground. So the police officers are trained never to cling to their perceptions, that when they walk into the door, they're going to pull their gun, and they're going to say, police, put down your gun, right? And if it's a person who's the cashier, they're going to see that police officer, and they're going to be like, oh, thank goodness there's somebody here, and they're going to put their gun down, right? But if it's the robber, they're going to turn and point their gun towards the police officer, and that's when they're going to get shot and they're going to get killed, right, in that situation. So it can be very detrimental to your life to cling to a perception. In this kind of situation, it's a life or death decision. If the police officer actually shot the cashier, they'd probably be in jail potentially for the rest of their life in that situation. So you would like to not cling to any perceptions. You're going to have perceptions, but you don't cling to them. So like in your role as a team leader, Vibhav, if you have formed some perception that an employee has either done their work or not done their work, you should never just cling to that. You should go talk to your employees and find out the truth. It's like, hey, I have this task that I remember communicating to you that's supposed to be due on Friday, but now it's Tuesday and I haven't heard from you. Can you give me an update on what this task is? Rather than just assume that they're late, rather than just assume that, this thing or the other thing, you would like to ask questions. So eliminating clinging to perceptions doesn't mean you're not going to have perceptions. It just means that you don't cling to it, meaning holding on to it. And then also, you don't cling to it as who you are as a person and think that I am a manager or I am a police officer or I am this or I am that, because when all that stuff starts changing, then your mind's going to be discontent.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Denise, you put your hand down, so maybe your question got answered or maybe it changed. Yeah, you still have a question?
Thank you, Teacher David. I wasn't sure if I should bother asking the question, because you did say that the Buddha didn't say there wasn't a soul, but I do still get this. I remember I had this question. I think it was answered from looking on YouTube, but I thought I would ask you anyway. So would you say that the concept of the soul is in conflict with the teachings of karma, or do I still not understand karma? Because there's the issue of who is being reborn. Yeah. So that came to mind when is it Vibhav was speaking, and then I thought I would ask, and I thought I wouldn't ask, but I'm asking.
Sure. So the concept of a soul conflicts with how the Buddha teaches the cycle of rebirth. When we talk about rebirth, the word that the Buddha used is samsara. People have been translating that to be the cycle of rebirth. But if you look at the teachings of the Buddha, there's nothing that's actually being reborn. It's better to think about this as the cycle of new existence, because every single existence is a new body and a new mind. If we keep calling it the cycle of rebirth, that's what other people refer to it as, so that's why I tend to use that. But if you look in the first volume, there's a place where I talk about how it's better to think about it as the cycle of new existence, because there's nothing that's actually being reborn. So when people talk about reincarnation, they will talk about a soul that moves from body to body to body, and they say it's the same exact being, but it's just a different body with the same soul. The Buddha never taught that. Even though people are attributing that to the Buddha, he never actually taught that. So the concept of a soul conflicts with the universal truth of impermanence. It conflicts with the universal truth of non-self and the way the Buddha described the cycle of rebirth, which ultimately all of that does come back to the natural law of karma, of cause and effect. But he didn't teach it because this soul can't be proven that you do have a soul, and it can't be disproven either. The way that a Buddha teaches is their teachings are independently verifiable. And if he's teaching that something exists, he needs to have proof to show that it exists. And if something does not exist, he needs to show proof that it does not exist, so that then you can independently verify it. So because he doesn't have evidence of whether it exists or doesn't exist, he just leaves it as an undeclared teaching. All right, so it looks like Zachariah has a question. He says, sorry if off topic and seems an irrelevant question to the subject at hand, but your guidance is very similar to another teacher called Eckhart Tolle. I'm familiar with this individual, but I've never actually studied any of his teachings at all. So if you're seeing that, that's something on your side, but I've never studied anything. I've never read any of his books. I've never taken any of his classes. I've never understood anything that he's teaching. So perhaps he's actually teaching part of what the Buddha is teaching, because I think he considers that he's learned Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism and a bunch of other stuff, and I think he's put all that together into what he actually teaches. So maybe you've been exposed to some of what he has taught about Buddhism, where what I focus on is just what the Buddha actually taught as the path to enlightenment. I don't mix it with other things. You're welcome, Denise. Very welcome. Yeah. Okay, let me see if we have any questions anywhere else. And it looks like Amina has a question. Right now, the body is in pain from injuries, and the mind is challenged to say the back and knee are hurt versus my knee and back are hurt. Any guidance? Yeah, you need to just keep moving the mind in that direction. So when you're talking to your employees, because I think you're a manager or team leader, Amina, when you're talking to your boss, when you're talking to your family or neighbors and they're asking you about the knee, just keep referring to it as the knee, right? Or the back instead of my back or my knee. Same thing with any kind of material objects. If you can refer to it as the, and even though you're going to stumble, you're not going to say it 100% all the time, even getting to 30 or 40 or 60 and just gradually incrementing that up, being patient with your mind, realizing that it's going through a process of shedding this my, and then just do it as much as you can. And where you didn't do that, then just next time just aim to do that. So you get it more and more ingrained in the mind that this body is not you. It's not who you are. Okay, so I don't see any other questions anywhere. Zachariah, you're welcome as well. Pleased to help you. Would somebody like to read chapter 22? Okay, looks like Samantha. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. The suitable way for attaining Nibbana, Enlightenment, fourth discourse. Monks, I will teach you the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana. Listen to that and attend closely. I will speak. What do you think, monks? Is the I permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent discontentedness or contentedness? Discontentedness, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent discontentedness and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Are forms permanent or impermanent? Is I consciousness permanent or impermanent? Is eye contact permanent or impermanent? Is any feeling that arises with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant, permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is the ear permanent or impermanent? Is the nose permanent or impermanent? Is the tongue permanent or impermanent? Is the body permanent or impermanent? Is the mind permanent or impermanent? Is any feeling that arises with ear contact, nose contact, tongue contact, body contact, mind contact as condition permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent discontentedness or contentedness? Discontentedness, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent discontentedness and subject to change fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Seeing thus, monks, the instructed noble disciple experiences a fading away of strong feelings towards the eye, towards forms, a fading away of strong feelings towards eye consciousness, a fading away of strong feelings towards eye contact, a fading away of strong feelings towards whatever feeling arises with eye contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. All the below were restated as above. He experiences a fading away of strong feelings towards the ears, towards the nose, towards the tongue, towards the body, towards the mind, towards whatever feeling arises with mind contact as condition, whether pleasant or painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. In experiencing a fading away of strong feelings, he becomes free from strong feelings. Through freedom from strong feelings, or his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge. It's liberated. He understands, destroyed his birth. The holy life has been lived. What had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of existence. This, monks, is the way that is suitable for attaining Nibbana.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. So here, the Buddha is tying together things that he was talking about in the previous discourses, where he's walking through, once again, the three universal truths and showing how this leads to enlightenment and liberation. So the mind needs to walk through this, which is what I do when I'm teaching you guys in the foundational classes, in helping you to be able to see impermanence, discontentedness, and non-self. And then ultimately, what he's showing you down here is that there's this gradual fading away of the strong feelings. That's what you're going to notice as your mind is moving closer and closer to enlightenment, that you're going to notice that there are certain situations where you get really enraged, where now you're maybe just frustrated or annoyed, and maybe you're even quietly frustrated, where before you were overtly angry and maybe even mouthing off at people, where now those feelings are fading away because the cravings are fading away. You're not clinging, you're not holding on to these things so much because you're doing your meditation, you're training in the Eightfold Path. There's this gradual fading away. Then eventually the mind becomes free of those strong feelings, that it completely eliminates the discontentedness 100%. And now when the mind is completely free of discontentedness, those strong feelings are gone, then the mind is liberated, meaning it's attained enlightenment. So this is where you can see that an enlightened being doesn't experience anger or sadness or frustration or any of those other types of things. And then when the mind is liberated, when the mind is enlightened, there comes the knowledge, it's liberated. What the Buddha is meaning here is that when you attain enlightenment, you will know that your mind is enlightened, because it'll be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years that you don't experience any discontentedness whatsoever. Your life will be going perfectly. You will be having, ease, and, everything will be just so straightforward for you. There won't be all these difficulties and struggles and stress and anxiety and exhaustion and tiredness and all this other stuff. It'll just be effortless to live life because your mind has essentially been upgraded to this new operating system, and now you can function with ease. So while the mind is going to know that it's actually enlightened, I don't suggest you ever convince yourself that your mind is enlightened, because you can go a period of 3 months, even 6 months, where you're not experiencing any discontentedness whatsoever. In that third stage of enlightenment, you might go 6 months without experiencing any discontentedness. And then boom, you get a little bit of 30 seconds of this or a minute of that. And you'll miss it potentially. If you're not paying attention to your mind and you think you're enlightened, you'll kind of ignore it because maybe there's ego and conceit still in your mind. You're like, nah, that wasn't discontentedness. I'm enlightened, right? So I don't suggest you ever convince yourself that you're enlightened, but instead just stay dedicated and diligent to always cultivating wisdom, growing and developing. Because once you get to enlightenment, where the mind has actually eliminated all the 10 fetters and there's no more discontentedness, well, your mind is now performing optimally, but you can actually increase the level of concentration and mindfulness and wisdom that you have in your mind beyond where you are at the fourth stage of enlightenment, when the mind's actually enlightened. So a newly enlightened being and someone who's been enlightened for like 5, 10, 20 years, their mind is going to be slightly different. They're still, neither one of them are going to have any discontentedness, but the person who's actually continuing to not convince themselves that they're enlightened and continuing to grow, not just on the path to enlightenment because they've already done everything they need to do, they're beyond training, but they're cultivating wisdom about all these other things in life. There's so many other things in life to cultivate wisdom about. Maybe you enjoy kayaking, or you like hiking or camping, or any number of different things that you might continue to cultivate wisdom about those things, but now you'll do it with this mind that has been completely purified. So while there's going to be the knowledge that your mind is enlightened, that it's liberated, it's best to not ever convince yourself of that. Because if you were playing a video game, or like maybe that whack-a-mole game where the moles are coming up and you have a mallet and you're hitting the whack-a-moles, if you think game is over and you're just standing there kind of like sitting back thinking the game's over, well, when one of those moles pop their heads up, you'll miss it. You won't be able to whack it because you think game's over. So it's better to never think game's over and just continue to grow and develop all throughout your life. No matter when you get to enlightenment, just continue to learn and grow and develop, because the cultivation of this wisdom that led to the very best thing you've ever experienced, which is the complete elimination of discontentedness, and it took you multiple years of cultivating this wisdom to get to that point, you're not going to just stop cultivating wisdom because you've seen how beneficial the cultivation of wisdom is, that it's led to the very best thing that's ever happened for you, which is the elimination of discontentedness. You're not going to just stop cultivating wisdom. So you just keep continuing to cultivate wisdom from as you are on this path and even as your mind is enlightened. So once you get to enlightenment, you will have understood through dependent origination that destroyed is birth, meaning that you're not going to experience rebirth over and over and over and over again. That the holy life has been lived, meaning that maybe in the past, yes, you were doing unwholesome things, but for a consistent long-term period of time, you've been making only wise decisions, and now this holy life is what you're living, and this holy life has been lived. One of the things that the Buddha says about an enlightened being is he says they're beyond training, that there's no more training that they need, right? So you have this holy life that you've lived, that what had to be done has been done, right? You're beyond training at this point. You did the work that you need to do in order to escape the cycle of rebirth and experience this peace and joy. And then you'll know that there's no more for this state of existence, that this is your last life. You're not coming back ever again. You'll be completely content with that because you've done all this hard work to get to this peace and this joy, that now after this life, there isn't going to be rebirth in the cycle of rebirth. So this is the Buddha combining the three universal truths into one discourse and kind of walking his students through in a way that he's asking questions. This is really key to see how the Buddha teaches, is that he will typically ask questions, right? He's saying, what do you think, monks? Is the I permanent or impermanent? Well, they're answering it themselves. They're looking in their own mind, they're thinking about the world around them, and they're coming up with the wisdom themselves, and they'll tend to retain this. This is really helpful when you're working with employees or children or even your parents or people like this. Instead of like telling them something, because people don't like to be told something, instead you can ask questions, and this will kind of lead them to a particular result through them teaching themselves. And they will tend to heed that advice more so than you just telling somebody what they should or shouldn't be doing. Instead, you can ask them well-developed questions that lead them to a certain result. And then they're teaching themselves, and they'll tend to follow through with that because it's wisdom that came from within their own mind instead of somebody telling them what to do. Do you guys have any questions on this one? Okay. Looks like Amina is saying, thank you, David. Your guidance is very helpful to evolve the practice beyond the mind, but also out loud when speaking with other people on a daily basis. You're welcome, Amina. Okay, so now let's go to chapter 23. Would somebody like to read this? Okay, Vibhav, go ahead, sir.
Disassociation will lead to your welfare and peacefulness. Monks, whatever is not yours, disassociate with it. When you have disassociated with it, that will lead to your welfare and peacefulness. And what is it, monks, that is not yours? The eye is not yours. Disassociate with it. When you have disassociated with it, that will lead to your welfare and peacefulness. In the case of the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the mind, the discourses are similar to that of the eye. Suppose, monks, people were to carry off the grass, sticks, branches, and foliage in the jettas grove, or to burn them, or to do with them as they wish. What do you think? People are carrying us off, or burning us, or doing with us as they wish? No, Venerable Sir. For what reason? Because, Venerable Sir, that is neither ourself, nor what belongs to ourself. So too, monks, the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind is not yours. Disassociate with it. When you have disassociated with it, that will lead to your welfare and peacefulness. Thank you.
Okay, Vibhav, thank you. So this is more guidance on how to realize non-self, that you disassociate with these things, these material objects as being yours and belonging to you, right? So if someone's like, hey, can I borrow your lawnmower, right? The lawnmower doesn't belong to you. It's not yours. Sure, practice generosity. Let other people borrow it if you're capable of doing that, right? Or any number of other things. You can get to the point where you disassociate with these things as being yours and belonging to you. Here, what the Buddha is using as an example is something that his students would have been familiar with, which is Jetta's Grove. This is a park where he would oftentimes teach. We're actually going to these places this winter, December and January, on a Buddhist tour. You guys are welcome to go if you'd like. You'll see the details on the website. But this is a place where he would teach, and they were very familiar with it, and their minds could have potentially had some clinging to it. So he wisely uses this as an example and says, if people take these grass, sticks, branches, and foliage away and burn them and do with them as they please, are they carrying us off? Is that what they're doing? Are they carrying and burning us? Are they doing with us as they wish? No, this doesn't belong to us. So you can get to the point where you do this with everything, whether it's your car, your house. Don't view it as mine and it belongs to me. You're essentially like a caretaker. Even though you have a mortgage, or even if your house is paid off, it doesn't belong to you because you can't keep it permanently. You're just essentially a caretaker of it for right now at this particular time frame. So this will help you to disassociate with these things as belonging to you. And you can even do this with your relationships too. That it's not my son or my daughter or my husband or my wife or my boyfriend or my girlfriend. They don't belong to me. This will help you to not hold on to them and then potentially have craving where you're now holding on to them so tightly that you experience jealousy or you experience anger. It's like, hey, they are their own independent person. They don't belong to me. So this will be helpful for you to disassociate with these things as yours and belonging to you. Looks like Samantha has a question. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you. With the concept of non-self, is there anything that is yours? I'm assuming no, but I'm wondering about the mind. But I feel like that is also not mine, because if there's rebirth, it goes on, to another existence with another form.
Yeah. So the mind is actually impermanent. It's not permanent. So when we talk about rebirth, as I was mentioning, that's really not the best way to think about it. It's better to think about it as a cycle of new existence, because at the end of this life, the body, of course, deteriorates. So does the mind. So there's a brand new mind that gets sparked from the cravings in the current mind that craving is going to spark a new mind. So even that mind is impermanent and it doesn't belong to you. So there's nothing that belongs to you whatsoever, because when this being, dies, you're not taking anything with you whatsoever. And when you understand universal truth of non-self, you understand that none of this stuff is you. It doesn't belong to you because there's no me here for it to belong to. And then just one distinction I'll help you with, Samantha, the way that I speak is that when I'm talking about something that isn't true reality, like when I talk about a soul, I will say the concept of a soul isn't something that the Buddha taught. But when I talk about what the Buddha taught, like non-self, instead of saying like the concept of non-self, because it's not a concept, it's actually a teaching or it's a truth. So I'll say the teaching of non-self or the concept of a soul. So that's how I use my language in order to distinguish what the Buddha taught and what is true versus what the Buddha didn't teach and what isn't true. So I'll use that word concept when it's not something the Buddha taught and there's not a way to independently verify it. So you can disassociate with all of these things because none of it's yours, because there is no you here ultimately. Okay, looks like we have something coming in on YouTube. So thank you, teacher. Eamon has a question. Can you say more on this subjectivity and how it relates to the mind's training of meditation? I'm not sure what you mean by subjectivity. If you can expand that a little bit more for me, I'm going to move on to the next chapter. But if you can expand that a little bit more for me, help me understand what you mean by that, then I'll be able to answer your question. Amina has a question in Facebook. Beyond physical possessions and other people, should we also feel like we are only caretakers of the body in this life? Yes. You're essentially renting this body, right? You're just a caretaker of it. That thinking helps with removing that craving and attachment to how the body feels, looks, etc. Correct? Yeah, that you're just a caretaker. And that's why it's wise to exercise, eat good food, and all this other stuff. But, it doesn't belong to you because there's no you here. And at the end of this life, this body is going to be left behind. So it's kind of like, you rented a house, you take care of it while you're there, but then when you leave, you just leave it behind. It's the same thing with the body. And if you're a good tenant, you would like to take good care of this house just the same way you take good care of this body. All right, so I don't see anything from Eamon yet, but I'm sure you'll put something in there and then I'll come back to it after this. So would somebody like to read chapter 24? Okay, Leo, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. The arising and elimination of feeling. Monks, these three feelings are born of contact, rooted in contact, with contact as their source and condition. What three? Pleasant feeling, painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling. Dependence on a contact to be experienced as pleasant. Monks, a pleasant feeling arises. With the elimination of that contact to be experienced as pleasant, the corresponding feeling, the pleasant feeling that arose in dependence on that contact to be experienced as pleasant, is eliminated and subsides. Monks, in case of painful feeling, neither painful nor pleasant feeling, similar discourse were spoken by the perfectly enlightened one. Monks, just as heat is generated and fire is produced from the conjunction and friction of two fire sticks, but when the sticks are separated and laid aside, the resulting heat is eliminated and subsides. So too, these three feelings are born of contact, rooted in contact, with contact as their source and condition. In dependence on the appropriate context, the corresponding feelings arise. With the elimination of the appropriate context, the corresponding feelings are eliminated. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Leo. So here, the Buddha is helping you to understand these three feelings of pleasant, painful, neither painful nor pleasant. That is discontentedness. And this arises, of course, you can see in all of his teachings, based on the mind having craving, desire, attachment. But in order for that craving, desire, attachment to be triggered, there needs to be contact through the six sense bases. So every single time your mind has ever been discontent, you can trace it back, that there was some contact that you experienced through the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, or the mind itself. And the mind saw this contact as either agreeable or disagreeable. And then you experience the associated feeling, either pleasant, painful, or neither painful nor pleasant. So the Buddha is helping you to see that these feelings are coming from contact. And where this is actually helpful is that if you're noticing a certain amount of discontentedness and you understand that it's because of contact through the six sense bases, now you can take direct action in order to stop this from occurring. So let's just say you're talking to a friend or family member and they're yelling and hollering and being upset, and you're noticing your frustration starting to arise because you see this as disagreeable, right? Because you still have craving in your mind. Well, now all you need to do is break contact, walk away, protect your mind. Don't allow your ears to continue to hear that. Because what people will tend to do is they'll stay in that conversation and they'll try to argue or they'll try to calm the other person down. But because you're not causing them to be angry, there's nothing you can do to calm them down. They have to choose to calm down by themselves. So if you understand that you need to protect your mind, you need to protect your doorways to discontentedness, and you understand that it's contact coming through these six sense spaces that is producing these discontentedness because it's triggering a craving, then all you need to do is break contact whenever you're noticing discontentedness arising. That's part of restraining your mind. When the Buddha talks about restraining your mind, that's what you need to be able to do, is be trained enough and disciplined enough that you can walk away. And that's going to take training of your mind. And now that's going to help you to eliminate your craving. And more, this person who's being argumentative, they're going to see that every time they become angry and argumentative, you walk away. And if they're interested in talking to you, they're going to start learning how to control their mind and be calm, or else they're not going to be able to have a conversation with you. You're not overtly teaching them here, but just because of the way of you doing things differently, whereas if you stayed in the conversation and you fight fire with fire, you just have a whole bunch of fire. But if they come at you with fire and you choose to walk away, that fire will burn out. It will exhaust. So that's what you would like to do here, is you'd like to eliminate this contact, and that's going to help you protect your doorways to discontentedness. So let me know what questions you guys have here, where the Buddha is talking about the arising of feelings and the elimination of it. By eliminating contact, you eliminate any kind of triggering of your craving, of the mind seeing it as either agreeable or disagreeable. And this is what will help you to restrain your mind, get more discipline, where you can eliminate the underlying craving and then thus eliminate the feelings. So it looks like Leo has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, I just had I was playing some video game on the phone, and I saw this I would say annoyance coming up, because maybe I was losing somehow too often. So after a while I realized there was annoyance, and I thought, okay, now I could break contact. I think this would be the way, right? I just put the phone aside. Mm-hmm. But I also thought, yeah, but it's not so strong. I'm not really angry or something. So maybe I just keep playing and I try to cut it off internally. Would you say it's better to just put this phone aside, break contact right away? It's better doing it this way than that the annoyance is... The other way would be that the annoyance is keeping a little bit longer in the mind, and after a while is fading away, right?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
Yeah, the longer you allow the mind to stay wired with these conditioned feelings, it'll keep firing that way. So if you're experiencing annoyment, that means your mind has gone past the bodily sensations. It's now experiencing the feeling. So the mind is now experiencing that conditioned feeling. The longer you allow that to happen, the more the mind's just going to stay wired that way. So you would like to break that up, right? So putting it down is going to be better for you in that situation, because it breaks up the feeling and it doesn't allow the mind to stay wired that way, so that it doesn't keep forming those conditioned feelings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so Eamon is saying some more here. I'm not sure how descriptive this is. Thank you, teacher. Eamon has a question. Can you say more on this subjectivity and how it relates to the mind training of meditation, disassociation, non-self? So I think maybe you haven't studied with the foundational text. If you study this first book, volume 1, I explained to you in chapter 4 what is the universal truth of non-self, and that will help you to understand that. And also in chapter 16, I explain it as well. Because as long as your mind is clinging to this concept of a self, that there's a self there, then it's not going to be able to realize non-self, which is the truth, right? Which is actually what's truly occurring, is that there isn't a self here, but the mind keeps clinging to it. So you need to do some background investigation and examination of the teachings to understand more of what the universal truth of non-self is and the pollution of personal existence view, because that takes me quite a while to teach it, and I wouldn't be able to do that here just in our short little exchange. But if you go back and read this and you have questions, you can send me a message, you can post it in our Facebook group, you can schedule personal guidance and we can talk one-on-one, and I will help you with this. But if you could go back and look at that, that'll help you to then be able to have the background before we go into it in any other detail. Okay. So Amina has more here in Facebook. Would like to understand how to work towards eliminating the contact of the feeling of pain, which is internal to the body. Removing mental anguish is one thing. You have taught students, are there other ways? So you're always going to experience some amount of physical pain. You're not going to be able to eliminate that as long as this being is alive. But you can eliminate the mental anguish. And what you need to be able to do is train the mind to eliminate its craving for permanent comfort of the body. And what you're doing right now by experiencing this pain, that's what's going to help you to do this. That's why you bring your practice up to the Eightfold Path for an extended period of time. And then as you're practicing over multiple years and you're having all these different experiences, you're now experiencing this pain in a different way than you would have several years ago before learning these teachings. So there isn't any kind of magic pill. I know you're not asking for this, or any kind of magic button to press, but instead you just stay dedicated to the Eightfold Path. You keep training your mind to understand that this body is impermanent, that the health of this body is impermanent, but also the sickness is impermanent too. Eventually you'll be past this, right? And just focus on something else. So like when I recently had some pain in the body, if I was experiencing a lot of pain, I would just close the eyes and focus on the breath, right? And just let it go, and just realize that, hey, there's some physical pain there, but the mind doesn't have to be having mental anguish as part of that. So you just need to kind of go through the physical pain and now training the mind that, hey, this body can't be permanently comfortable. So if you experience enough of these situations, more and more you'll let go of this craving of wanting the body to be permanently comfortable. And this will be what eliminates the mental anguish. But that physical pain is always going to be there to a small degree because you need it. As an enlightened being, if you were standing too close to a fire, if you didn't have physical pain, you wouldn't know to move, right? So you need that as a feedback mechanism, but it'll be very muted physical pain by the time you've gotten your mind fully trained. Okay, Leo, you have a question?
Yes, I wanted to just ask again about playing the game. If it's, for example, if it's just really subtle, the annoyance, it's like maybe lasting 5 seconds. But if I would break contact, it would only last 1 second. So would it better to choose that way, to break contact?
Yes.
What? Okay, so sometimes, yeah, okay. So what about going through the fire in order to appreciate the fresh air on the other side?
What that is that you're experiencing these painful feelings and you're going to have to back that up. You would like to get it to the point where you notice it as a bodily sensation. If you allow the feeling to exist in the mind for 5 seconds, you haven't backed it up enough. You have to back it up to the point where you're catching it as a bodily sensation and the mind hasn't even formed the feeling. Going through the fire to appreciate the fresh air on the other side, that's understanding that you're going to have to experience some painful feelings. And that's probably one of the reasons why you're asking these questions, is you don't want to put the game down, right? You want to continue to sit there and play, where what I'm teaching you is put it down, and your mind doesn't want to do that. And it's going to experience some painful feelings letting that game go. And that's what you need to walk through. That's the fire that you need to walk through, is letting this game go. Because otherwise you won't ever get to the point where the mind can play the game and not experience the annoyment. If you keep allowing the mind to stay wired this way, 5 seconds of annoyment is 5 seconds of annoyment. By the time you get to enlightenment, there won't be any annoyment whatsoever.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Then maybe I have another question. I think that's enough. Yeah, thank you, David.
Okay, yeah, you're welcome. All right, so now we're going to go to this next chapter. Is there someone who would like to read chapter 25? Okay, looks like Vibhav's up again.
The way to purity. Of face the eightfold path. Of face the eightfold is the best, and of two things that stage is for. Freedom from strong feelings is the best of things. Of humans, best is he who sees. This is the very way. There is none else for seeing purity. Herein do you a faring go, the way to baffle Mara this. Herein when you have faring gone, as end you'll come to make of ill, shown surely as a way by me, who ease from darts had come to know. 'Tis you, the dedicated must work. The men so gone but show the way, who in the reflection as they fare, from Mara's bonds find liberty. Transient is all men think and do, when this by wisdom is discerned. Then does one turn away from ill, this is the way to purity. Painful is all men think and do, when this by wisdom is discerned. Then does one turn away from ill, this is the way to purity. Without the self men think and do, when this by wisdom is discerned. Then does one turn away from ill, this is the way to purity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So here you can see this is from the Dhammapada. If you're familiar with the references of how people reference the teachings of the Buddha, whenever you see DHP, this is from a section of the Pali Canon called the Dhammapada. This was written about 1200 years after the death of the Buddha. There were scholars who looked at his teachings and they tried to summarize them in verse form. And they're somewhat poetic. There are some rare situations where the Buddha spoke in ways that was a little bit poetic, but very rarely did he speak that way. So whenever you see kind of a poetic type thing, and it's kind of like, what are they even talking about here? This isn't really truly the actual words of the Buddha. This is a scholarly work by multiple scholars who are trying to summarize the teachings of the Buddha in a verse form. And I don't have these in the book series very frequently because they don't really lend themselves to really deep investigation and study, but I have them in a few places because in a few places, there's actual real truth to what they're saying, where like right here, they're saying of the ways, the Eightfold Path is the best, right? Because yes, it's the Eightfold Path that's going to lead to this liberation. And of true things, the stage is 4. There's 4 stages of enlightenment that are going to take you, that the Eightfold Path is going to take you through ultimately. Freedom from strong feelings is the best of things because, getting to enlightenment would be the very best thing ever. Of humans, best is he who sees. So when they say he who sees, what they're talking about is cultivation of wisdom, that you see the truth about the natural laws. So a human being who has purified their mind and sees the natural laws, then this individual can see and they have wisdom because they can see the natural laws. And people consider enlightened beings to be perfect beings, that these individuals are the best of human beings. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but I just thought I'd do that one paragraph. Usually what I do down here is I explain it to you in a way that you can use it for your practice. And then I explain to you why I don't really reference very many of the Dhammapada teachings in words, essentially because they're not really the actual words of the Buddha, they're a summarization. But let me know if you guys have any questions here on anything that you're seeing. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So we'll go to chapter 26. Is there someone who would like to read this? Oh, here's the description. I thought I had it somewhere. I go, piece by piece, helping you to see this is the Dhammapada, and then here's a better way to think about that, to understand it. Is there anyone who would like to read this next chapter? Oh, this is actually the Eightfold Path. We usually don't read this in this class because I teach this very thoroughly. It takes about 2.5 hours for me to teach this, and I teach it in all the foundational classes, which the group learning program is restarting tomorrow, essentially, the unofficial restart, and then June 1st is the official restart, where I'll end up teaching this over 3 individual series of classes, and I'll go into deep detail about each individual section. But does anybody have any questions on the Eightfold Path? Because typically when I get here that the students are studying with me, they already have studied the Eightfold Path to a certain level of depth, and I just open up to questions rather than reading the actual teaching. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So let's go down to the next chapter, which is chapter 27. Is there someone who would like to read chapter 27? Okay, we've got a couple people here. Pat, I'm going to let Denise go ahead since she hasn't gone yet.
Oh, thank you. So, reflection on every step can be liberation to Nibbana. Certainly, monks, I say fetter destruction, taints, depends on the first jhana, the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana, the sphere of infinite space, the sphere of infinite consciousness, the sphere of nothingness, the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception, the ending of perception, and monks, it is said, I say so fetter destruction depends on the first jhana. For what reason is it said? Consider the monk who, distant from sense desires, distant from evil ideas, enters and resides in the first jhana, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. Whatever occurs there of form, feeling, perception, volitional formation, choices, which are choices/decisions or consciousness. He sees wholly as impermanent objects, as discontentedness, as a disease, a boil, a sting, a hurt, an infliction, as something alien, inferior, empty, not the self. He turns his mind away from such objects and, having done so, brings the mind towards the deathless element, enlightenment, with a thought. This is the peace, this is a summit, just this, the stilling of the mind activity, the renouncing of all rebirth, the destroying of craving, calm, ending, the cool. And steadfast therein, he wins the fetter destruction. If not wins the fetter destruction, just by reason of that teaching energy, that teaching sweetens, he snaps the 5 lower fetters, and being not subject to return from that world, heavenly realm, becomes completely cool there. Monks, suppose an archer or his student were to practice on a straw man or heap of clay. Presently he would become a long shot, a rapid shot, a piercer of great thicknesses. Even so, monks, the monk who is distant from sense desires, is distant from evil ideas, enters and resides in the first jhana, wherein applied and sustained thought works, which is with thinking and pondering, based in seclusion, filled with excitement and joy. Certainly, monks, it is said, I say fetter destruction depends on the first jhana, and it is for this reason that it is said. Okay. In the case of fetter destruction, depending on the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana, the perfectly enlightened one spoke similarly to that of the first jhana.
Can I pause you there for a second? Can I pause you there for a second, Denise?
Okay. Thank you.
This chapter is quite long, and it goes into some other attainments here. So let me teach about this for a second, and then I'll explain to you what we're going to do at that point. So what the Buddha is doing here is he's saying that these attainments of the jhanas and these other attainments, the sphere of infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception, and perception and feeling, he's saying that these are essentially going to help you to be able to then eliminate the pollutions of mind, the fetters, the taints. These first 4 attainments, the jhanas, every single person who makes their way to enlightenment will have experienced those jhanas. That those are essentially enhanced qualities of mind. They're individual phases that the mind goes through as you're making your way to the first stage of enlightenment. Now, those particular phases that the mind's going through, there's certain qualities that the mind's experiencing that are needed in order to be able to eliminate the actual fetters. So that's what the Buddha's saying in this first part that Denise has read so far, is that essentially in order to get to the point where you've eliminated the fetters, you're going to need to have gone through the jhanas in order to be able to get to that point. But now what he's going to do is he's going to talk about these other attainments, which are not as detailed in his teachings, at least the teachings that we have in the Pali Canon. Now, whether there was content that was happening during his lifetime that really explained these in a lot more detail, that, we don't know. We might have lost that. But what I've done is down here, actually it's not this chapter, it's in volume 7, I've actually detailed each one of these other attainments. And rather than have Denise read these individual attainments, because it's essentially the same thing that we've already read, I would like to refer you to volume 7, where I talk about these, because there's a chapter in there similar to this one where the Buddha's talking about these attainments, and then I explain what each attainment is. Because these other attainments here that the Buddha's talking about, these 5, not everybody is going to experience those. There's some that everybody will experience, but there's some that not everybody will experience. And it's in volume 7 that you're going to see that content. I make that very clear, what the attainment is and whether everybody will experience it or just some people will experience it. So here the Buddha is saying that these jhanas and these attainments are going to help you to be able to get to enlightenment. And these are things that you'll experience along your way to enlightenment. So do you guys have any questions on this? Okay, I don't see any questions anywhere. Okay, so let's go to the next one. We're just going to skip over all of that. This is the Four Noble Truths. This is the way that the Buddha teaches the Four Noble Truths in detail. So I'm going to have one of you guys read this so you guys can see, if you haven't already seen in the foundational text in the very first volume, this particular Four Noble Truths, and then I'll explain to you further information that you can glean from this above and beyond the way that I've taught you the Four Noble Truths and all the other classes. So it looks like Denise is raising her hand. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, Teacher David. I am very curious about the passage I was just reading, so I wondered if we'll be exploring it in the course coming up. So maybe you could explore it then.
I don't teach that in the group learning program.
Okay.
What I do instead is I refer people to the book, because in there I've described it, because it's very intricate, it's very detailed. I haven't even committed those attainments to my memory, because in my opinion, the way that we're translating this, it doesn't really lend itself to being able to understand 100% just from the name, right?
Okay.
So that's why I documented it, and then I just have people learn it that way. And then if you have questions, you can come let me know. So this is in volume 7, and if you have any issues finding it, just let me know.
Okay.
But if you pull it up and you do like a search for infinite space, then you'll see where I've detailed all these attainments, and you can understand what they are, and then just let me know what questions you have.
Yeah, because the infinite space sounds similar to something I've learned about from another person, Joe Dispenza. So I'm really curious about the teaching about meditating, going into infinite space. And so now I'm extremely curious. So I'll have a look, volume 7.
Yeah, you're going to see that these aren't really fitting for describing what actually is occurring. Take a look and then just let me know. Because whatever perception you have now, I think you're going to see that it's not what you're thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think Pat raised his hand for chapter 28. Let me see if I can find you, Pat. Where'd you go? There you are. Okay, go ahead, sir.
The Four Noble Truths. Monks, there are these Four Noble Truths. What for? The noble truth of discontentedness, the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness, the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness, the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. And what, monks, is a noble truth of discontentedness? It should be said, the 5 aggregates subject to clinging, that is, the form aggregate subject to clinging, the feeling aggregate subject to clinging, the perception aggregate subject to clinging, the volitional formation aggregate subject to clinging, the consciousness aggregate subject to clinging. This is called the noble truth of discontentedness. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness? It is this craving which leads to renewed existence, accompanied by excitement and desire, seeking excitement here and there. That is craving for sensual pleasures, craving for existence, craving for extermination. This is called the noble truth of the cause of discontentedness. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness? It is the remainderless fading away and elimination of the same craving, the giving up and letting go of it, freedom from it, non-reliance on it. This is called the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness? It is this noble eightfold path that is right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This is called the noble truth of the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. These, monks, are the Four Noble Truths. Therefore, monks, an effort should be made to understand this is discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the cause of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the elimination of discontentedness. An effort should be made to understand this is the way leading to the elimination of discontentedness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So let's make that effort to understand this just as the Buddha is advising, right? So when you guys have learned the Four Noble Truths with me in all the different classes, I summarize it in a way that's immediately tangible for somebody to be able to understand it and apply it in their life. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he was doing the same thing, but I suspect that they understood more about the five aggregates during his lifetime than people understand now, because the way that he describes this first noble truth, it's not something that the average person really understands. So during his lifetime, they might have had a fairly good understanding of the five aggregates, so this would have made sense to people, because this is his very first teaching. This is the Four Noble Truths. This is where somebody would start, right? But starting with this level of detail oftentimes is very challenging for students. So I teach people the first noble truth is every unenlightened being will experience discontentedness, because that's what the Buddha is talking about here. That through clinging to any of the five aggregates, form, feelings, perceptions, volitional formations, or consciousness, you will experience discontentedness. Then he goes on to talk about the cause of that discontentedness, which is craving, right? And that's what we talk about, is how the mind is craving permanence, right? But the Buddha is going into detail here and talking about craving, which leads to renewed existence, meaning continuous rebirth. Then he's talking about this accompanied by excitement and desire, right? Being able to understand that those conditioned pleasant feelings are just as much a part of the problem as the painful ones. Seeking excitement here and there. That's what the mind does with craving, is it's chasing pleasant feelings. It wants everything to be pleasurable. That is craving for sensual pleasures, right? The mind is longing, yearning through the sense spaces, wanting things to be pleasant. The eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind itself. There's also can be a craving for existence, where somebody wants to exist in this world. And then there's the craving for extermination, which is like wanting to die, committing suicide. So you need to get to the point where you're not craving to exist in the world, but you're not craving to not exist either. That you're in an existence and your mind is peaceful in the present moment. That's what the Buddha is talking about here, is the extinguishing of all cravings, desires, attachments. And he's describing it here in the second noble truth as this is the cause of discontentedness. But then he says the way to eliminate discontentedness is to eliminate that underlying craving. That by eliminating the craving, right here where he's talking about eliminating craving, that's what's going to eliminate your discontentedness. And then when he says, what's the way to do that? Well, it's the Eightfold Path. It's the Eightfold Path that's going to teach you how to eliminate your cravings, desires, attachments. So I summarize this in a very short way to help people be able to penetrate into it and get the benefit right away. But this is the detail. And it gives you a little bit more understanding of not clinging to the five aggregates. He gives you some detail about the types of cravings that you could potentially have. And then from that point forward, this is pretty much the way that I explain it as well, the third and the fourth noble truth. So let me know what questions you guys have here on the Four Noble Truths and the way that the Buddha is teaching it. Looks like Vibhav has a question. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, David. I just had a question about the use of the word extermination. And is it why we use that rather than just saying like something like death, which is a little bit more clearer, or is there a particular reason for using extermination?
Yeah, it's very clear to me. He talks first about craving for existence and then craving for extermination. That's clear to me. Maybe you're not seeing it as clear, but I see that as clear.
I guess I was just saying it's not less commonly used than something like death, which is more like a common word.
Well, the way they would speak 2,500 years ago is going to be different than the way we speak now, right? Like if you ever look at old English from even like 200 years ago, or even like people 50 years ago, they speak differently than we speak nowadays. So, 2,500 years ago, they're speaking in this way, but it's still very clear to me.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so let me see if there's any questions anywhere else. Okay, Amina in Facebook is putting volume 7. I don't know if you're in there, Denise, but Amina is trying to help you out with a link to volume 7. Actually, that's the Notion site. Amina, a better place to get that, it would be from our website, thebuddhadailywisdom.com, and then click on free books. That would be a better link than this one, just for you to know for the future. Okay, so now let's go to the next chapter, which is chapter 29. Is there someone who would like to read this? Okay, Vibhav. And then Samantha will take the last one.
The Four Noble Truths and Dependent Origination. And what, monks, is the noble truth of discontentedness? Birth is discontentedness. Aging, sickness, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair are discontentedness. Not to get what one desires is discontentedness. In short, the 5 aggregates based on clinging are discontentedness. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the rising of discontentedness? Conditioned by ignorance, unknowing of true reality, the volitional formations, choices, decisions come to be. Conditioned by volitional activities, consciousness. Conditioned by consciousness, name and form. Conditioned by name and form, the 6 sense bases. Conditioned by the 6 sense bases, contact. Conditioned by contact, feeling. Conditioned by feeling, craving. Conditioned by craving, clinging. Conditioned by clinging, existence. Conditioned by existence, birth. Conditioned by birth, aging and death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair come to pass. This is the rising of the whole mass of discontentedness. This, monks, is called the noble truth of the rising of discontentedness. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the elimination of discontentedness? From the complete fading out and ending of ignorance, unknowing of true reality, comes the ending of volitional formations, choices, decisions. From the ending of volition formations, choices, decisions, the ending of consciousness. From the ending of consciousness, the ending of name and form. From the ending of name and form, the ending of 6 sense bases. From the ending of the 6 sense bases, the ending of contact. From the ending of contact, the ending of feeling. From the ending of feeling, the ending of craving. From the ending of craving, the ending of clinging. From the ending of clinging, the ending of existence. From the ending of existence, the ending of birth. From the ending of birth, aging and death. Sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair comes the ending of the whole mass of discontentedness. This, monks, is called the elimination of discontentedness. And what, monks, is the noble truth of the practice that leads to the elimination of discontentedness? It is just this noble eightfold path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. This is called the noble truth of the practice that leads to the elimination of discontentedness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vibhav. So this is a merging of the Four Noble Truths, independent origination. Back in Volume 5, we studied dependent origination, and it shows up again here in Volume 10. I think it's next week, and if it's not next week, it'll be the week after that, where we're going to go through and I'm going to teach you dependent origination again. But here, this is where the Buddha is merging these two, where he's showing you that, hey, when he talks about birth and aging and sickness and death and all these other things as being discontentedness, that's what he's talking about in dependent origination, that is the noble truth of discontentedness, where every unenlightened being is going to experience discontentedness. Then when he talks about the arising or the cause of this, it starts with ignorance. And while we often talk about craving, desire, attachment as being the cause of discontentedness, it starts all the way back with ignorance. If it wasn't for this unknowing of true reality or this lack of wisdom, then the cravings would never come to be. The only reason why craving and clinging comes to be is because of the ignorance. And that's why on this journey to enlightenment, you're always looking to cultivate wisdom. And it's through the cultivation of wisdom, through independently verifying the truth, that you're able to then be able to extinguish craving and clinging, because you understand with wisdom what craving and clinging are, and you understand the tools and techniques of how to do that. So this is where you dismantle dependent origination through the arising of wisdom. And then the Buddha now talks about the elimination of it, is that you need to eliminate this ignorance. And that's what you're working to do on the path to enlightenment, is why you don't believe any of the teachings, because you don't know what's true or false if you're just believing. So you like to cultivate the wisdom. And now it's just like a bunch of dominoes that if one falls, all the rest of them fall too. So if you knock out ignorance, then you'll knock out making decisions through that ignorance. And if you knock out that, then you'll knock out this consciousness actually forming. And then if you knock out that, then it's not going to find a name and form, which a name and form is the physical body, right? And now if the consciousness and physical form haven't come together, then there won't be any forming of the 6 sense bases: the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, the body, and the mind. Then without that, there's no 6 sense bases, so there's no contact through them. Therefore, there's not going to be any feeling. If there's no conditioned feelings, then there's not going to be craving, there's not going to be clinging, there won't be an existence, there won't be an actual rebirth, and then that's where you're going to end all the aging, death, sorrow, grief, pain, displeasure, and despair. It all completely eliminates by eliminating that top line, right? If you eliminate ignorance, all of these dominoes fall apart. And the way that you do that is through the Eightfold Path. It's the Eightfold Path that's going to lead you to that. So let me know what questions you guys have here. Again, we're going to explore dependent origination again next week, I think it is. But here the Buddha's showing you this merging of these. You can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom if you have any questions. Okay, even better. Thanks, Amina. So yeah, Denise in Facebook, if you're in our Facebook group, Amina's got the link there for you. But you could also find it on the website as well. Okay, so I don't see any questions anywhere. Oh, Amina, I guess I'm the in-between here. Denise is in Zoom, Amina's in Facebook. Denise is saying thank you, Amina. Okay, all right. So Samantha, if you would like to read chapter 30, you can go ahead and do that, ma'am.
Thank you. A stream enterer is worth more than being a wheel-turning monarch. Monks, although a wheel-turning monarch, having exercised supreme sovereign rulership over the 4 continents with the breakup of the body after death, is reborn in a good destination, in the heavenly world, in the company of the heavenly beings of the heavenly realm. And there in the Nandana Grove, accompanied by an entourage of heavenly nymphs, he enjoys himself, supplied and endowed with the 5 chords of heavenly sensual pleasure. Still, as he does not possess 4 things, he is freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, nor freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. Although monks, a noble disciple, maintains himself by lumps of alms food and wears rag robes, still, as he possesses 4 things, he is freed from hell, the animal realm, and the realm of afflicted spirits, freed from the plane of misery, the bad destinations, the netherworld. What are the 4? 1. Here, monks, the noble disciple possesses confirmed confidence in the Buddha thus: the Tathagata is an arahant, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true wisdom and conduct, fortunate, knower of the worlds, unsurpassed leader of persons to be tamed, teacher of heavenly beings and humans, the enlightened one, the fortunate one. 2. He possesses confirmed confidence in the teachings thus: the teachings are well expounded by the perfectly enlightened one, directly visible, immediate, inviting one to come and see, applicable, to be personally experienced by the wise. 3. He possesses confirmed confidence in the community thus: the community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is practicing the wholesome way, practicing the straight way, practicing the true way, practicing the proper way. That is, the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. This community of the perfectly enlightened one's disciples is worthy of gifts, worthy of hospitality, worthy of offerings, worthy of respectful salutation, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. 4. He possesses the virtues dear to the noble ones, unbroken, untorn, unblemished, unblotched, liberating, praised by the wise, not misunderstood, and leading to consecration. He possesses these 4 things. And monks, between the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents and the obtaining of the 4 things, the obtaining of sovereignty over the 4 continents is not worth a 16th part of the obtaining of the 4 things.
Okay, thank you, Samantha. So first, let's talk about what a wheel-turning monarch is. This is an individual who's in a leadership role. During the lifetime of the Buddha, it would have been a king, most likely. But now we might think about that as a king or a queen or a prime minister or anybody, even like an owner of a company. Because what a wheel-turning monarch is someone who's in a leadership position and leading multiple people, a large population of people, and they do so through the teachings of the Buddha, that they're making the decisions about the country or the company or something like this as part of the teachings, that they understand the teachings and now they're making the decisions in that way. Whereas if, like, say you were working for someone and in this company people were backstabbing each other, they were having competition, they were really cutthroat, if the boss was rewarding that kind of conduct, those individuals are going to go deeper and deeper into the darkness. But if someone's a wheel-turning monarch, they're able to influence a large population of people to understand the teachings through their way of leadership, that they're leading this group of people through the teachings, that now if you're the manager of that company or the owner of that company and people are backstabbing and cutthroat, then they would be dealt with in a responsible, loving and kind and compassionate way. And now the people in the company can realize, like, oh, this type of conduct is not appreciated here in this company, for example. So nowadays we might think about a wheel-turning monarch, like I mentioned, as a prime minister or a king or a queen or something like this. And what the Buddha is saying is these types of individuals, while they're valuable and helpful and beneficial to the world, he's saying somebody getting to the first stage of enlightenment is even more beneficial than that. Because an individual who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment will have a certain amount of wisdom that they've cultivated to be able to get to that. And now they will be beneficial for themselves and for many people around them in the entire world, because they will have wisdom that is going to help other people. So there's multiple things that an individual who's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment will be practicing. And here, this is just 4. The first 3 is that you would have confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community that you're part of, that you wouldn't have any doubt any longer in your mind. That oftentimes when people are coming to the path to enlightenment, they will have doubt about the teachings. They will have doubt about their community. They will have doubt about the Buddha himself or their teacher, or they might have doubt about their own ability to get to enlightenment. But by the time you've gotten to that first stage of enlightenment, you no longer have doubt, because you've seen a significant improvement to the condition of your mind in your life. And that's why you will have this confirmed confidence in the Buddha, the teachings, and the community that you're part of. And then ultimately, another aspect of getting to the first stage of enlightenment is there's improved moral conduct, that you've eliminated that wrong behaviors part of the 10 fetters. There's wrong behaviors and wrong observances. Because one of the things that we do in the unenlightened state is we put out harmful moral conduct. And the way that I think about it is it's like a pipe of oil has busted and now it's spewing oil all over the world. Well, one of the first things that you would like to do if you're going to clean up your life and clean up your mind and clean up your relationships is shut down this oil spewing all over the world. You're not going to go clean up the mess first. You're going to shut down the oil pipe so it's no longer spewing all over the world, right? So what the Buddha teaches you is early on in your practice, pay a lot of attention to your moral conduct and improve the way that you interact with people through your speech, your actions, and your livelihood, because what you choose in terms of your moral conduct is going to have a direct effect on you. Whereas if you're putting out harm through your speech, your actions, or your livelihood, this harm is going to come back to you. So he teaches you to clean up your moral conduct. And by the time somebody's gotten to the first stage of enlightenment, they would have cleaned up their moral conduct to the level of what is described in the Eightfold Path, that first level of description of what's in the Eightfold Path. So these 4 qualities are things that someone in the first stage of enlightenment will be practicing, but they will even be practicing more than just this. This is just one discourse. So you shouldn't look at these teachings in isolation. There's other discourses where the Buddha is explaining other things. That's what the volume 5 was all about. And that's what the retreat is in January that I teach. Each January I teach a retreat that is everything you need to get to the first stage of enlightenment. So you can attend that here in Chiang Mai or through our live stream. So there's multiple things. It's not just these 4 things, but these are 4 significant things that somebody would have been practicing in order to get to that first stage of enlightenment. And what the Buddha is saying is this person is more beneficial for the world, not as a pecking order. The Buddha doesn't teach a pecking order, right? Because that would be what the mind's conceit would do. Instead, he's teaching you that, hey, there's a benefit to getting to this first stage of enlightenment because you can actually help other people in the world potentially as you're interacting with them and so forth and so on. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this chapter. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for reading. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your interest in learning and growing on the path. As you guys would like to learn more, you're always welcome to attend these classes. We're going to be in chapters 31 through 40 next week. So if you'd like to read those ahead of time, you'll see the words of the Buddha, you'll see the words from me, and you'll be more informed for the class. You can get these books for free from our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and just click on free books. Tomorrow, we're going to have our unofficial restart of the group learning program, and we're going to have a session called Getting to Know the Teacher, where the students can ask me any and all questions about my personal life and my past, my current things that I'm into, the future, anything you guys would like to know. You guys can ask anything and everything, essentially help you to learn from all the mistakes and all the misery and despair that I've had all throughout my life, to be able to learn from those lessons and how to overcome those. You guys are welcome to ask any and all questions that you like. So we're going to be doing that at 9 a.m. on Sunday at the temple, and 9 p.m. I'm going to be doing it from here at home. So you guys are welcome to attend that live, or you can watch the recordings, and you can feel free to ask any and all questions that you like. And then we're going to be doing our meditation on Wednesday, of course. We have the meditation schedule where we're going to do a guided loving kindness meditation and then open up to any and all questions that you guys have. So whatever you guys decide to do, feel free to let me know questions you have. Have a lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Keep in mind that we're going to have our official restart to the group learning program on the 1st of June, which is not tomorrow, but it's next Sunday. So you, your family, your friends, you guys are all welcome to join this at no cost. So thank you all for attending, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Be well and take care. Sawadee Khap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.